Alright guys, Jameson and Alex here. Today we're going to be talking about the Spellbreaker Ranger.
Yes.
From Valda's Spire of Secrets.
Mm-hmm.
So, if you're new to the channel or the subclass series, what we're going to do is go through all the abilities gained in the subclass. We're going to rate it based on its roleplay value, combat value, overall class synergy, based on how the abilities gained in the subclass improve on the base class abilities. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to be entered in our D&D Beyond Players Bundle giveaway.
Want to give the free stuff.
And let's just jump straight into it. Alex, Spellbreaker, what are we getting?
Spells.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So it says Spellbreaker, like this is Mage Slayer Ranger. Like to the extreme, that's exactly what this is. There's no misleading, no misnomers, no nothing.
Checks out.
What it is. You get Detect Magic, See Invisibility, Counterspell.
Hey.
My second favorite level 3 spell.
Pretty good.
And Freedom of Movement and Scrying. So lots of RP-based spells.
Lots of RP.
Plus Counterspell. So that thing, again, will come up later in the video in more detail, but obviously, mind you are a half-caster, so you're using these spells. Keep in mind, you can't just be firing these off like you're a full caster, so
right.
A grain of salt and all. Also, at level 3, we have Anti-Magic Strike. Once on each of your turns, when you make an attack against a creature you can see, you can use your bonus action to deliver a small anti-magic pulse. For the duration of the attack and damage rolls, the effects of spells targeting the creature, as well as properties and powers of magic items worn or carried by the creature are suppressed. As a very wordy description that labels a lot of stuff.
Yes.
This disrupts spells such as Mage Armor, or Mirror Image, which protect the creature, as well as spells like Hellish Rebuke, which are triggered as a reaction to the attack or damage roll. On a hit, the creature takes an extra 1d6 force damage or an extra 2d6 force damage if it was concentrating on a spell when it was attacked.
Right, so essentially what's happening here is it just suppresses it for the attack. It's not till the end of their turn.
And it's not disabling it altogether.
Right.
It's not a dispel magic on there.
It's basically just like if you imagine an arrow being shot and like on the end of it, it has like an anti-magic aura.
Yeah.
And once it hits, it goes away. So it's not like going to disable their stuff till their next turn.
It's got Magic Pierce.
It just lets your attacks bypass if they have like magical armor, whatever. It just helps you get maybe a little bit better chance to hit, maybe a little bit more damage in. Bypass like Armor of Agathis, stuff like that. That's 10 HP.
It really does do kind of what Ranger does of very high floor damage and like low ceiling. Kind of what base Ranger does. That it just makes sure that that floor stays as high as possible. Because if stuff does have Mage Armor and other magic armors and things that are helping keep its AC up, you can clip through that.
Right. It's very interesting, if anything.
Yeah, very interesting.
Then at level 7, we have Spell Resistance.
Just not interesting.
You have advantage on saving throws you make against spells.
Which is very good, though.
Very good. Yes. Moving on to level 11, we have Arcane Burst. You've learned to rip the fabric of magic itself. As an action, you can expend a spell slot to create a small arcane explosion centered on yourself in a 10-foot radius sphere. Each creature other than you within the area must make a dexterity saving throw against your spell save DC. On its failed save, creature takes force damage equal to half your ranger level plus 1d8 for each level of the spell, or half as much on a successful save. So, it is definitely a small arcane explosion.
Yes, very small.
Thanks again to our sponsors Hit Point Press and their Fable Makers deck. Omens and fortunes that you can incorporate into your campaigns. It's got books to describe ways to add these things into your campaigns, to add intrigue, plot hooks, all kinds of different ways to utilize these features.
Hey, check out this really weird or intriguing, interesting thing that kind of steer people back towards your main plotline that you're needing to advance a story you're trying to get to.
Absolutely. So guys, make sure you check out the link in the description down below.
And finally, at 15, we have Anti-Magic Curse. This is fun. You've mastered the art of tearing small, persistent holes in the fabric of magic and attaching them to unfortunate souls. As an action, you create a 5-foot diameter sphere of anti-magic centered on a point you choose within 60 feet, as per the anti-magic field spell. If the point you choose is on a creature, the sphere moves with the creature. I emphasize that. Okay. The anti-magic field lasts for 1 minute or until you choose to end it on your turn. No action required. Once you use this ability, you cannot use it again until you finish a long rest. Two key points of emphasis here. Do you hear the word save in there? No, you do not. So if you choose to target something with this, there is nothing to save against.
Right.
So even creatures that have their legendary resistances can go kick rocks because there's nothing to legendary resist against because they just get hit with it. The other thing is the very interesting conversation that's going to be created between you and your dungeon master about what it means to target the point that is on the creature. Yes. Because, and this is something that you brought up, so I will let you give the detailed version.
Another side thing as well on there is there's no concentration for you to have this either.
Also correct.
Also very good.
Yes.
But I think it is very important the fact that they added that one word on there, which is on.
Yeah, you're not choosing a creature.
It's like, it says if the point you choose is on a creature, not a creature, but on a creature, that leads me as a DM to interpret it as you can target like a piece of armor, something that they're wearing.
Can I target his ocular socket?
That's where it gets a little bit more in the gray area there. Yeah. If you're targeting like a specific spot on something, but you have to keep in mind it's only a 5-foot diameter.
Yes.
So it is a very tiny thing. So if you hit someone if you hit it like a caster, for example, in like their knee, and they're tall, they could still use verbal components because they're taller. So
that's what I'm saying. I want to target their nose because I don't care how big they are. The nose isn't 2.5 feet from their mouth.
So just to bring it down a notch, there has to be some kind of viability on here for the DM because to not have any way to break it, concentration, it lasts for a minute.
Yes.
And Anti-Magic Field is an 8th level spell.
Yes.
So, it is once a day on here, and it is much smaller than the actual spell.
Yes.
But if it is where the DM will actually let you just hit a caster, that caster is just done.
It's useless.
If they say, like, they can't just take off their shirt or take off whatever point you targeted or whatever.
Yeah.
Then...
But if that's also allowed, it really makes the ability super lackluster. Because maybe all you're doing is making it skip a turn. Right. Which becomes a similar thing of like hold person if it saves.
They'd have to be able to. I look at it as a DM. They'd have to be able to understand what's happening.
Right.
Right. So it might take them time to figure out what the heck just happened. Why can't I cast magic?
Yeah,
they might burn a spell or two trying to figure out that they can't cast.
Yeah.
So
there's
a lot of DM
which is why I let it with. It's going to create a very interesting conversation between you and your DM if you try to do this about.
And I just wanted to make sure we specified this before we got into all the rating because this is going to cause some discussion and make sure with your DM ahead of time before you choose this if your campaign is going to go to 15 that you get this clarified because it will make a huge difference in the impactfulness of it.
This is correct.
That being said, we'll move into the rating portion of the video. First up is the roleplay value, asterisk as always. Talking about roleplay value, we're talking about interacting with the world around you, interacting with NPCs, non-combat scenarios, avoiding combat, basically things outside of the initiative order.
That's correct.
Not talking about your class fantasy, history, lore, background. That's on you as a player.
Yes.
We can't rate you, but we can rate the abilities gained in the subclass and how they might improve your potential in those roleplay scenarios.
Yes.
So, all that being said, looking into the actual subclass here, you have a very good spell list for roleplay. You have lots of options on here.
You do.
I say lots. It's several spells, really.
Because all 5 of them definitely have use for RP.
For sure. I mean, Detect Magic is almost exclusively RP.
Yes.
See Invisibility can be used in combat if something turns invisible and you want to make sure you can keep an eye on it.
Yep.
It's going to come into play. Counterspell is typically combat, but if someone's trying to charm in a roleplay scenario or something like that, or trying to cause some shenanigans, you can shut that down. Freedom of movement, again, can come into play in roleplay, and of course, scrying is just straight up, it's roleplay.
100% of the time.
Lots of options on there for the roleplay and the spell list, but again, you are a half-caster being a ranger, so you have to keep that in mind. Advantage on spell saves can definitely come in handy, but that is much more of a situational thing, because it's going to be leaning more towards like charms and stuff like that are outside of combat.
Yep. Detecting thoughts and some truths and such things.
So there are some things on there that it's a little bit more niche use on there, but it definitely can come into play.
Yep.
That being said, that's really all there is outside of if you really want to use this anti-magic curse thing. I guess you really could, but it's a once a day thing.
Yeah, and maybe it's at the end of the day and you're wanting to really mess with somebody.
Right,
you'd be
distraction
like,
or who knows?
Walk into the wizarding world of Harry Potter and just find Dumbledore and says, "Nah, no spells for you today, sir."
Right. So. There's some stuff that can be done for sure. There's some potential. So, all that being said, we just went ahead and we gave it a 2 out of 5 in the roleplay rating. Yep. So, interesting spells, but that's really the gist of it.
Yeah. And as normal, if things are lackluster as far as amount of time spent on the RP, things are more focused on combat, and that is clearly the case. While Counterspell is the only one of the spells that's going to have regular use in combat, basically the rest of the abilities lean themselves more toward combat. The Anti-Magic Strike is super interesting. I do love the way it's worded about you being so knowledgeable about magic and how it works. You're able to kind of ignore magical spells, and specifically mentioning things like Mage Armor and Mirror Image, Hellish Rebuke. The couple of spells, because those are kind of unique spells. They're kind of there, and you can't just kind of deal with them. But no, I don't care. I will ignore them and do what I want to do anyway.
I think another one on there too, which it doesn't say, but I mean, Shield would fall in the same thing.
Absolutely,
because while it's hitting them and dealing damage, they wouldn't be able to react. With
it, so. And you pray they attempt to try the shield because you're just going to ignore it anyway.
Right.
Which is fantastic. It's extra damage.
Yeah.
So it's force damage at that. That's either 1A or 1B, depending on how you feel between that and psychic damage, are the best damage types in the game. So never a bad thing. And again, there's no limit to that. The only restriction is with all this stuff, which we'll cover, is you got to be hitting spellcasters. Spell resistance at level 7. Again, nothing complicated. Advantage on saving throws against spells of all kind. It's fantastic. The Arcane Burst, definitely the thing that kind of kneecaps my excitement level for this a little bit, just because why is it only half your Ranger level? Because if you cast this at level 11, use a level 1 spell slot. Does it round up or round down? I missed that.
It doesn't specify. Usually with spells, it rounds up, so I would say round up.
Okay, because otherwise at level 1 would be, half your Ranger level would be a 0 if you were at level 1 for some reason. Of course, you wouldn't have to build at level 1, but it's beside the point. At level 11, you cast this for the first time. You're going to do 6 damage plus 1d8 for a level 1 spell. So an average of 10 damage in a 10-foot radius sphere around you. Yeah. And if there anybody, and it doesn't specify, enemy creatures or hostile creatures, anybody who's within 10 feet of you has to make the save. It isn't also a dexterity save, which is not the best save, not the worst save to target, but not the best save to be targeting.
Make it an intelligence save. I mean, come on.
Or charisma save. Either or. Because the casters. Anything would be, precise strength and con would be better than that. But anyway. So it's just not much damage, and or the area is not that big, and it's only targeted around you. A lot of Rangers tend to be
ranged.
I mean, it's
not always, but it does tend to skew that way. But you do have a D10 hit die. I would like to see if this maybe give you some more armor, so you can kind of maybe play that melee Ranger to be in there a little bit more, but it doesn't. Is what it is. And of course, the capstone, just the fact that there's no save for it, even though it is once a day, you can just legitimately take one caster out of the fight. Like it failed a banishment spell or failed to save on a polymorph, it doesn't get to resave it for a minute. It's just completely taken out of the fight. Yeah. And you can just choose to go delete the thing. Right. As you should. If you can tell there's a squishy caster on the opposing team, and it's you can tell it's like, oh, he's got some robes on him. You can do nothing. Now you're dead. Yeah, it completely shuts them down. Yeah, I mean, even if you had a compromise with the DM where it's like, maybe if the arrow hits them, as long as the arrow is connected to their body, they can't. Yeah, it's like it's there. If you say it is like attached to the arrow, then you can kind of have some more. I just had that thought while we were going over it. Is you can have lots of different ways to interpret how it actually functions. Yep. If you just have it be a permanent 5-foot aura for 1 minute, that you're killing. I mean, casters without spells are useless. Are nothing. They are wastes of oxygen. They typically have low armor class and low health. So as you get rid of all of their offensive capabilities, they are just were glass cannons without the cannon. They're just glass.
I mean, the only exception to that rule, the biggest exception to the rule is definitely Druid, because they can still wild shape and something to give themselves more health, because freaking Druids, man. And clerics are usually beefier with better attacking but like specifically, sorcerers and wizards are basically useless without their spells. But all that being said, as we like to say on this channel, there is the huge caveat with this entire subclass because it is such a specialized subclass. If you don't fight casters regularly, if you're not fighting at least one caster in every combat you fight, your entire subclass, besides the spell list, is giving you Nada.
Yeah. You're getting your bonus action to deal some extra damage, basically. And, I mean, you have that small little AoE burst, but it does, like, no damage.
Right. I mean,
So,
you're getting basically nada.
yeah.
So, score-wise, we went with a 3.5 out of a possible 5 on combat because there's a lot of focus on combat, and you can make a caster's life absolutely miserable. But when you don't have casters to use your abilities on, you become very much just base ranger a lot of the time.
Yeah, definitely. And I think another thing, too, is with the Arcane Burst as well, it does use an action.
Yes.
So that means you're foregoing your attack and extra attack to use
Right.
it.
So you can't fire an
not only-
arrow and do this.
Exactly. So that is just, you're probably going to, on average, do more damage just hitting them with, hitting 2 arrows, two shots, versus trying to hit something with this thing and do less damage probably.
Yes.
So it is really almost like you don't have a level 11 ability at all.
It will feel that way a lot of times. Because you're also not going to pop that unless you have at least 2 targets within 10 feet of you. Because it's definitely not worth it if you're only hitting one creature. You can just attack them twice, do the same amount of damage, and you won't have to waste a spell slot to do it.
Yeah, I wish it would be at least your full level of Ranger just to make it a little bit worthwhile.
Because think about it this way, with that math.
Even with that, it's not that much.
If at level 20, you pop this, use a level 1 spell, it's 1d8 plus 20. So on average, you're talking 25 damage.
It could be multiple targets, but at the same time, it's only 10-foot radius.
Yeah.
So you would be in danger if you're at level 20 being within multiple things.
The times that would be more than 2 people is so close to 0 for a campaign. It's really silly.
Yeah. So all that being said, moving into the synergy side of things, we do have some spell slot synergy.
Yeah.
Though it is very limited because, like we just said, the AoE ability is very weak.
Yes.
So it's probably better to use your spell slots for something else than that.
Yeah.
For most times,
Rangers are really good with already having some AoE damage spells built in, like Hail of Thorns, things like that.
Yeah.
Or having buff spells, like if you're other Rangers that were to have haste for some reason. There are generally, I think, better uses for your spell slots for you in the long run than just this burst kind of thing. Grand majority of the time.
The anti-magic strike is really interesting.
Yes.
Like we have said multiple times here, it does increase your floor damage, and it does help you get around some things that you otherwise wouldn't be able to get around.
Yeah.
Specifically, one of the biggest things to me, obviously like things like shield or even Armor of Agathis, like all that temp HP, you bypass it. You just go straight to them, which is really interesting because any spells that are, any effects that are going to give that temp HP could just bypass it essentially and go straight to that. So that is interesting to have that. And at worst case scenario, it's just giving you an extra bonus action to deal some extra potential damage. So it is what it is on there. It's interesting. Again, AoE options just better things probably to spend your spell slots on than that. Spell save advantage is always good for survivability. It's just a great ability for any class or subclass to have.
Forever and ever, amen.
And the anti-magic curse is also very, very potent. Even with some caveats or DM discretion, it's still going to be very strong. It's a level 8 spell, basically. A mini level 8 spell.
So level 6.
Yeah, still. Which, it's still going to be really solid. At the floor is going to be really solid, and ceiling is... DM allows it to just happen, and it just kills a caster. Yeah. Like, it just shuts them down completely. Yep. So, very interesting. A little odd on some of the choices with it. So, we just gave it a 3 out of 5 on the synergy. Some interesting options, but we're not really necessarily sure on the tuning of how things are and how much it really is going to synergize.
Going with the level 11 ability, level 15 ability, it's like complete opposite potential of like not much to whole sweet mercy.
Yeah.
So there's some definitely weird roller coasters in ability gained in here. From, okay, that's pretty cool. Not exactly exciting, but very impactful to, why is this here? To sweet mercy, you might be careful with this.
Right. Some crazy stuff on here, but that's going to wrap it up for this one, guys. Let us know in the comments down below your thoughts. If you enjoyed the video, remember to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell notifications so you know when our new videos are coming out. As always, thanks to our sponsors. And of course, guys, thanks for watching.